Hello, everybody. My name is Miguel. I'm a First in Business Recruitment Ambassador, and today I'm joined with some lovely guests from the Wilson Jones Career Centers. If y'all will go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Georgia Weeks. I'm one of the internship coordinators at the Wilson Jones Career Centers.
And I'm Ole Madera. I am a career coach in the Wilson Jones Career Center.
Perfect. So I have a few questions for y'all regarding virtual interviews and how they go. So the first question I have for y'all, can you help us explain what a group interview looks like and typically in a virtual setting?
Yeah, so typically in a virtual setting, when you do a group interview, there's typically, depending on the need, you can have anywhere from 4 to 5 people in a group. At least that's been my experience. Anytime that you get more than 8, sometimes it tends to get a little bit challenging. But I do think that it's important to just realize that it's just more than just you in the room naturally. And so you're going to have to give a little bit of space for others to contribute anytime you're in a group process.
Yeah, and what it looks like virtually is probably making sure that you're muted or making sure you're strategic about when you're communicating or contributing.
Perfect. Next question I have for y'all. Are there any myths or misconceptions about group interviews that y'all want to clear up?
Yeah, I think with a group interview, as Ole said, it's an opportunity for a employer, in this case, an organization, to see exactly how you interact with others. And I think a misconception can be that the person who speaks the most or this person who gives the most is going to do the best. That's not necessarily the case. You can be a very shy person and still be really successful in a group interview. It's all about being strategic as well as actively listening is a huge one.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think sometimes there's a misconception that because you're in a group interview, it's somehow less important than an individual interview. So I would just say treat it very seriously as if it's an individual interview, because a lot of the time people like to see how you interact in a group setting.
Yes. So, next part, I'm going to ask you some questions of how to prepare and how to stand out. Do y'all have any tips for nervous students or first-time interviewees?
Well, I would say number one, just be yourself. Always be authentic. That's very, very important. So even when you feel like saying something extra or something's not necessary, I mean, it's just important that you kind of ask yourself, is this really me, or am I trying to impress someone too much, etc. So I would say tip number one, just be yourself. That's very important. As far as tip number two, I would just say kind of think a little bit before you actually answer the question. That allows two things: allows you to think about your answer, but also to make sure like your mic is on, that you're being mindful of the technological things around that, so that way you have a little bit of breathing room before you give the answer.
I think another tip, not to go for another cliche, but preparation is key. I mean, really, especially, it's totally normal to be nervous, but doing something like this, that's what's really going to help is preparation before. So thinking about your responses and practicing them before, that can really help with nerves, which then can translate into confidence. So that would be another tip that I would add on to that.
Perfect.
Good tip.
What's the balance between confidence and collaboration in a group setting?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one? Or you want me
I
to
want you to take that one.
So confidence and collaboration. That's a good question. As I said, I would say in a group setting, especially, collaboration is key. So I would say think about that as the context first, and then within that, bring up that confidence. So if you're more like an introvert, really essentially think through how you want to approach the group setting, so that way you kind of get rid of the jitters beforehand. Once you do that, I think it'll allow you to get a little more confidence going into the group setting. So definitely have collaboration at the forefront of your mind, because that is why it's a group interview. But then within that, really think through how maybe you tell a story inside your mind, or maybe you think about certain specific situations where you are confident, so that way that comes out beforehand. One of the things I like to do is before an interview process, I like to listen to like music, maybe more upbeat music, and that allows me to kind of have a little more confidence, but within that, I still like to be myself. And so, again, authenticity is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, I think as well, making sure when you're in an interview, a group interview, making sure that you're maybe inviting your fellow collaborators or applicants to join the conversation, or being responsive to what they're saying and adding to it, or showing that you're listening and you are respecting their contributions.
Yeah, it's important not to be so overbearing where you kind of cloud the rest of the group. So I would say go from like a maybe overbearing person to like a facilitator of some sort, really asking open-ended questions and things like that. So even though sometimes people can be confident, it's important to not be too confident where you can come off as like conceited or something. So just be mindful of those things, and I think you'll do fine.
Perfect. All right. Next part I have for y'all, it's interview etiquette and just some final advice. So what are some easy mistakes to avoid during the virtual interview?
I think some really easy things that can be avoided is technology stuff. Ole kind of mentioned that earlier, making sure that you've hopped on the virtual meeting, getting on the Microsoft Teams beforehand to make sure that it works. Your audio works, your video works, so that way when the time comes, you're ready. Same with lighting or camera angle. I know we all hate that kind of like double chin angle, so making sure all of that stuff is set up, I think can be really easy to kind of avoid that by preparing.
Yeah, and I would just say again, like preparation is really important. I know you hit on that earlier. So really taking it seriously, and getting a good night's sleep beforehand, eating well, light, that kind of thing is very, very important, because you definitely don't want that kind of distraction going into a group setting. You want to be calm, you want to take it seriously, and you want people to understand that it is a goal of yours to land that position or join that organization, and that has to come across, and that means you have to put your game face on.
All right. How important is body language, even over Teams?
Very important. I think it's really important to remember that your body language sends a signal no matter if you intend it or not. I mean, obviously crossing your arms is going to be you're guarded, you're closed off. Leaning, slouching is going to show you're not really interested, you don't really want to be there. So it's really important to, sit up tall, because as Ole said, we were talking about confidence. That's going to convey like, I'm confident, I know what I'm talking about. So sitting up tall, as well as using kind of, not such big hand gestures maybe because it's in Teams, but having your little square that you're operating in.
Yeah, so that's a very, very, very important point. I would say, 70% of what you say is nonverbal. So I think pay attention to when you're not talking as well, or when you're on camera, you're communicating a lot already. Some of the things that you said when you do speak are important, but also when you're not speaking, that's just as important. You want to be engaged, you want to be focused, you want to maintain good eye contact as well, because then if you don't do that, or when you don't do that, it may be perceived as dismissive or minimizing to the person speaking, and you want to make sure you give them that respect that's needed, so you can show how good of a team player you really are.
Also, one last thing, I think it's important to have a good facial disposition. Make sure you're not necessarily smiling like a maniac the whole time, but having a nice kind of smile, or that shows that you're engaged and you're interested as well.
So do you guys have any final tips for students who want to feel confident and show their best selves in the interview?
I have a great resource offered by UNT called The Big Interview, where you can do some of those warm-up questions before an interview.
Yeah, I would just say, anytime that you are in a Teams meeting, think about it as if you're being recorded for an interview. So let's say you're on live TV. Mm-hmm. So it's important that you're like you said, you're smiling, you're engaged, and you just never know when you're going to get that next question. And so you want to be prepared for it and ready to respond. It's also very important to be clear, concise, and to the point. Sometimes, you don't need to just add on and add on. Sometimes you just need to answer the question and stop. And so, depending on what the context is, also don't underestimate the power of your story. You know, I had a mentor that once told me, it's like, doesn't matter, you know, where you are in the process, you always kind of want to tell your story, but you want to do it in a concise, respectful way. But that's how you make things memorable. So if you do have a story, especially when you're introducing yourself, it can help other people kind of remember you better if you phrase it in the form of a mini short story.
Well, thank you so much. These are some awesome tips, and I encourage everybody to go look at the Wilson Jones Career Center. You will learn so much. Thank you guys again, and go Mean Green. Look forward to seeing you at the interview.
Yay.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.